You really have to like drop every single desire that you've ever had, because it's always going to pull you in the wrong direction until you realize every single thing that you want in your life is because you want to be happy. So like you can say like, oh, well, I want this job. Why? Oh, because I want a lot more money. Why? Because I want a big house. Why? It all is going to come down to because it's going to make me happy. But anyone that has those things will tell you that it just doesn't provide happiness. It's just not how that works.
The economy is about to tank. If AI continues the way it's going to for like the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be so bad. The value of money as a whole is going to go down in the world because of AI. And it's a crazy thing to think about. This software can basically like tank the economy of the world and change the landscape of how we do things and how we live. But that is what's happening.
Welcome back to New Society Podcast. Society is fucked, for sure. We're working on it. I feel like things have been going really absolutely crazy lately.
With what? The world in general?
Just the world in general. So much is going on. It almost feels a little hopeless, but we're still going to work on it.
Yeah.
Or at least people can be a little more meditative while the world is burning. But I think you were right about this whole AI situation.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's coming out with like all these economists and these like futurists basically saying like, hey, can we slow down a little bit?
Yeah, what was the deal? What happened with that? Because I didn't know.
Well, nothing's going to happen with it. It's just they
but
realize
because
they realize how fast it's going, and where the companies in tech are competing with each other so much that it's just going to be such a drastic rise, and we need to have the population basically ready for it before it really gets crazy. Like, you know, all this stuff that needs to be put in place by the governments to handle the insane loss of jobs. That's why economists are coming out and saying, hey, let's, you know, put a stop to this, because we don't have the infrastructure right now to accommodate what's about to happen. Yeah. And this is what I was saying. It's going to get really, really bad before it gets good, because you're going to have a ton of people without work.
Yeah.
And our lawmakers and everyone, that no one really sees what's coming, but everyone in tech does, right? Like everyone in my field like knows exactly what's about to happen, and people are just like focused on other things. I mean, there's other things to focus on, but like this is a pretty drastic situation that we're about to come across. And they said, oh, let's pause it, but that can't really happen, because if you tell America to pause it, the other countries are going to take over and it's just going to keep going. China's not going to pause it. You know, no one else working on this. It's not like it's this thing that no one else can do except us. Everyone's doing it, and it's getting easier to do. So
do other countries have the
of course
they're doing it?
Of course. Like I said, it's not a hard concept what they're doing. Once you know how it works, you can build your own. Like you can build your own thing right now, depending on how much computer power you have, and it's all based on computing power, because it's all just like iterations.
Right.
So
what did that even mean then, that they're putting a halt on it?
No. They're asking.
Oh, they're asking.
They're asking companies to put like a 6-month pause at least on it, so that basically the world can catch up to this.
How is the world going to catch up in 6 months?
It's mostly for, you know, governments, but also for people to realize, you know, what exactly is happening. Like, as we talked about before, like there's kids in college now that are not going to have the jobs that they're going for, you know, that they're studying for. That needs to be understood more. Like people are talking about it. There's more like talk of it, but no one's doing anything about it. Because what's the answer, right? And the answer is that the governments have to step over and do a universal basic income and start giving people money out of college, start figuring that out already. And that involves, you know, realizing the dollar is going to go down. That involves burning money, and involves all these things. And that's what they're asking, is like for that pause to really look at it before we do it. But it's expanding at such a crazy rate that it's just not going to happen. I mean, the new versions of these things are coming out like every 2 months, you know, and everyone is going in on it. Every investment company is going hard on it, as they should, and if they want to stay ahead of the curve. So
I think There's gonna have to be like riots in the streets before anything changes. Because like our friend was saying, which I wanna like have him on to talk about because it was confusing to me, but he was saying that like all the Congress people are like, was that what what was he talking about? That all these lawmakers or something, these people at the top are like billionaires?
Yeah, I mean, like you mean the congressmen? Yeah, all the congressmen, like the majority of them are millionaires at the very least, which also doesn't make sense. I don't want to get into the politics of that, but if you think about it, like the salary for a congressman is like $100,000 to $300,000 a year. So how are you making $20 million a year? You really got to wonder. And it's because of, probably a variety of things that they're able to have that amount of money.
Oh, like that. What happened recently that came out?
Oh, the Supreme Court justice that was taking trips with the billionaire. It's terrible stuff. But I mean, everyone knows it's happening. Everyone knew it was going on. There was no other way for them to get rich unless they had some kind of insider information or someone was giving them money. And that's just what it is. But with that being said, it's like the reason that he said that is because those people need to basically understand and come to an agreement that their money is going to lose value, right? And they need to enact laws to accommodate everybody. Because once you do a universal basic income, which is like everyone gets X amount to live, where does that money come from? The money has to come from somewhere. And the money has to come from the richest people in the country.
Right.
It has to come from the 1%.
But
you can't tax someone that doesn't have anything.
Right. But those are the people controlling things.
Those are the people that are making laws, and they're going to learn the hard way, which is terrible for everybody, because if they don't do something about it, there is going to be riots on the street. And the reason is not because it's a civil issue, right? Like if McDonald's is automating some of their stores right now, fully, right? Meaning all they need is for a delivery truck driver to come in and load the ingredients and leave. So they're cutting out all of this. Now, if McDonald's wants to make more money, right? That's their goal. So the best thing for them to do is literally automate all their stores. But doing that is such a bad thing. But there's no way they can not do it, because other people are going to do it and they're going to be crushed by it. So they have to do it. And that's where the riots are going to come in. It's like, you're not allowed to do this.
It's not even just that. I mean, there's so many things, like lawyers and, people with real jobs are not going to have jobs.
And it's going to get really bad, because once people can't, have a place to live and eat, like that's when things get crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the pause comes from. I know. That's where the pause, please pause this is coming from, because the economy is about to tank. Like, if AI continues the way it's going to for like the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see it's going to be so bad, and hopefully there's enough people that are at that level that understand it enough that can explain it to some people, where it's like, and now the economists are like coming out, like these very popular and not popular, but very highly regarded economists are coming out saying, hey, like, we really need to do something about this. So hopefully they mitigate it before it happens.
Yeah.
But
I mean, is it going to affect the people at the top that are making the laws? Like, is it going to affect them enough to the point where they're going to want to actually do something about it?
No, so it's the opposite. Like, it's not going to affect them until the very end, because it's only going to affect them if you do the universal basic income, but you have to. It's like they have to do it, but they're just going to put it off for as long as possible, because their value of money is going to go down as soon as you do that. The value of money as a whole is going to go down in the world because of AI. And it's a crazy thing to think about, that this software can basically like tank the economy of the world and change the landscape of how we do things and how we live. But that is what's happening.
Yeah.
It's freaking nuts.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need to go through a whole other episode talking about this.
Yeah. No, I know. But I just thought it was crazy that it actually got to the point already that they're calling for a hold on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah. And like you were saying, like, I think the world needs to start being a little more meditative and
we're going to have to be
a little more introspective, because you're going to have to find your happiness in other places. You know, even when the universal basic income thing comes in, you know, you're dealing with a situation like how it was with COVID, where you're kind of like, you know, trying to figure out what to do. Because one of the sad things that happened during COVID is there was a lot of people aimless because they didn't have jobs. And going into work and associating with people was the only thing that they had, right? And they weren't able to be with themselves. And I don't know, it's tough. I mean, when you were going through it, you actually had some breakthroughs with your meditation.
When I stopped working?
Well, when you stopped working and then COVID hit and you were home.
Right.
You were literally meditating for like
But it wasn't even just being home. It was, you know, all of a sudden I was living the life that I'd always wanted. And I wasn't happy. I was like more unhappy than when I was working, which was just so bizarre. But yeah, but it really takes dedication. And I think that that's something that people need to realize. It can't just be this like little thing that you do as an aside. It really has to be an extreme discipline and the only thing that you care about when it comes to making like really big changes with, you know, your mental state and whether or not you're ever going to be happy in your life. Like, it can't just be these little like, oh, take this supplement and like do some meditation, because like you really have to like drop every single desire that you've ever had, because it's always going to pull you in the wrong direction. So, I mean, and it doesn't have to be forever. It just needs to be until you realize that every single thing that you want in your life is because you want to be happy. So like you can say like, oh, well, I want this job. Why? Oh, because I want a lot more money. Why? Because I want a big house. Why? It all is going to come down to because it's going to make me happy. But anyone that has those things will tell you that it just doesn't provide happiness. It's just not how that works. And I talk about it every time, but like, it's because of dopamine. Like, that's just the nature of dopamine. It makes you want something. It urges you to go get something. It, you know, it makes you feel good when you dream about the possibilities. But as soon as you have it, there's no more anticipation. There's no more dreaming. It's just the reality, and dopamine stops. So if you don't know how to be present, then there's absolutely no way for you to enjoy those things. So every single desire that you have in your life, unless it's just to be happy, is completely pointless. So you really have to go through this process of dropping every single thing that you've ever cared about and just realize, you know what, I just want to be happy. And that's the only thing that matters. And then when you get to that point, you're able to start working on, you know, your sense of self, like your ego, and starting to separate yourself from this person that you've created. And then you're able to separate yourself from these voices that you have going on in your head. Like, there's a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like discovering your sense of self or whatever, I remember when we were there and then you just came into the room one day just crying because you'd hit some kind of breakthrough.
Yeah. I was sobbing.
You were sobbing. Yeah. It was like uncontrollably crying, actually.
Yeah.
But what do you think that was? And was that the catalyst to you realizing that you like finally found like happiness without desire?
No, because it happened way before that. Like, it started with, you know, realizing that everything I ever wanted doesn't make me happy. So that made me depressed. And then realizing, okay, I absolutely need more meditation. I had been meditating 15 minutes a day every day for maybe 3 years before that. But it wasn't like, you know, a discipline. It wasn't like, you know, every part of my life is based on moving towards like enlightenment, you know? So then I started looking into it and reading every single book that I can get my hands on, which is most of the books, you know, you told me about. And then a lot of it was yoga, but not like physical yoga, like the actual discipline, like the teachings.
Patanjali.
Yeah, Patanjali. And that worked for me because I'm somewhat of a structured person. Like I could really, it felt very tangible to me. So it was, you know, taking away anything that was diverting my energy elsewhere. So like any relationship that was like any tension in a relationship, any lack of sleep or dietary issues, alcohol, you know, just anything that would drain energy from my ability to be meditative. And then
How did this structure help you out?
Because I felt like I was following something, and that's helpful to me. Like I'll have to look at exactly what it was, but it's like there's like 8 limbs to it. And one of those is, you know, structuring your life, like sleeping at the same time, you know, like getting used to like rhythms in your body. Then there's breathing. So it's not just doing a breathing technique, but it's learning your own breathing patterns. So when you're angry, you're breathing a certain way. When you're happy, when you're sad, when you're very meditative. So you learn those, and then especially you learn the breathing pattern that you have when you're very relaxed, and you bring that into your meditation. And then it's your posture, you know, like having your back straight when you're meditating. It's...
I know that's a big thing, to just not fall asleep. Having your spine straight.
Right. Although sometimes I can fall asleep sitting up if I'm like overtired meditating. But what else is it? So it's your posture, and then it's not moving. Now this was like actually huge for me, because that is one thing that helps you fully separate from your body and understand where the master is in your body. So in the meditation, like you're gonna want to like, there's be like little like itches somewhere, or like your legs will hurt so bad and they'll feel like there's no blood supply, and you want to move so bad. And this is meditating I was meditating an hour a day, and then maybe 20 minutes before bed. But if you just don't, then all of a sudden the feeling of your body like disappears at some point, and you just feel you feel like you're levitating.
Yeah.
So that was a really big part of it. Another huge part is the identification with thought, which that kind of just like happened one day. Like I was just reading this one line in a book about yoga, and it was basically just, you are not your thoughts, you know, in so many words. And I was like, oh my God, like it just like...
That's a big thing for sure, yeah.
Right? It just, if you can, and you can hear that and it can mean something to you, but like there's something like that just happens when you fully get it. And it was just like everything went silent. And it felt like I was like, you know, all of a sudden the noise shut off. And it just stayed like that pretty much for weeks. Like I would go throughout my whole day and I would just be like listening to nothing.
Right.
And that didn't bring me any happiness yet, but it made me able to be meditative, because I wasn't just completely caught up in all of the noise in my head, and I wasn't identified with it anymore.
Yeah.
So bringing all that into the meditation, And then another part about it was, this is why I wrote a book on it, because I'm like, it was so much.
Yeah.
And it came from so many books. But another thing was, I realized I was like, I would sit down to meditate and it felt like it was just something wrong. Like I wasn't feeling what I knew I was supposed to be feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I just asked myself, like, what is it? Like, what's wrong? And it was just like, my brain immediately was like, you're looking for something. I'm like, what am I looking for? And it said God. And I'm like, oh, that's like weird. And then I'm like, you know, like, what is my concept on God? And I thought that to me, like, God is in everything, but in natural things. That's all I like really thought about it. But then I was like, wait a minute, like, it's more than that. It's in every single particle. Like, it's in all of my particles. It's all in inanimate objects. It's in that too. It's in the air. And then I just felt this like wave of oneness and like love, and just like, I just felt like I was high out of my mind all of a sudden. Yeah. And that was definitely like another layer that I had to, you know, a layer that I had to take away. And then another part of it was sleep. So I truly feel that you cannot watch TV before bed if you want to have like transformation. Sleep.
Yeah. Transformation.
Yeah, like just a completely, because that's what it feels like. You become a completely different person, or more so like you shed everything that you've built up and you just like come back to this like pulsing energy sort, like, I don't know. But when I would go to sleep at night, it was like it was just like such a almost scary feeling that it was, I guess, like an out of body experience every night. So like I would feel myself fall asleep. So like I'd be fully aware, but I'd be aware that my body is asleep. So I couldn't feel my body at all. And I just don't know how to explain like how that feels. But it's just like you're completely weightless, but you're still this thing and you don't know what you are. Like, it's so strange, but you know that like, oh, this is what I am. Like the weight that I've been feeling in my body is not me. Like, I'm separate from this. But I would literally, as I was falling asleep, it literally felt like I was doing a backflip out of my body.
I remember you telling me this.
Like, and I would be like, a lot of times it would just wake me up.
Right.
Because it was so weird.
Like jarring.
It's so jarring. So that would happen every night and I wasn't dreaming. And I was just like aware, and it was like so peaceful, but also exhilarating. Just really strange. And then it got to a point where it was like a week long where I just felt so happy, but like not happy, like dopamine happy where you're like looking forward to something, but just like everything felt like just the best feeling in the world. Like, it definitely why people do drugs. Like, that's must be what the feeling is that they're getting. Yeah. Because it just felt like I was like baking cookies, and I'm like, this is just the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Like, everything, baking cookies, just like every little thing in the world just felt like the most blissful, amazing feeling. Yeah. And I was like, maybe it happened. Like, maybe I'm like, maybe all the things that they write about has happened. And then, and honestly, it was really weird. Like, animals were being so weird to me. I don't know if
weird towards you, or
like literally like squirrels were running up to me.
Okay, I don't remember this.
Did I never tell you this?
No.
I was afraid
to running up to you.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell anyone this because it was just like I sound crazy.
Turn into Snow White.
I literally felt like Snow White. I'm telling you, it was the weirdest experience of my life. Literally, squirrels would run up to me, go up on their little... I'm not kidding. And look at me in the eye. I'm telling you. Okay. Stray cats were coming up to the window and just staring at me. A bird landed on my lap. Do you remember?
Okay, you didn't tell me this.
Did I not tell you?
You did not tell me this.
I really made a point of not saying it out loud, honestly. No, I told you about the bird thing.
I think you might as well.
I did tell you about that, but there was a lot of it that I'm
amazing.
like, I just can't even tell anyone this because they're going to think I'm so crazy.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I feel like, I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
But I believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it really felt like
that stillness.
The other thing that happened that maybe what the animals were picking up on was after I got to the point in the meditation where I couldn't feel my body, then I started to feel this like energy kind of like growing out of me. Like I felt like what I was just this ball of energy around myself. And it felt like about like here, you know?
Right.
And it would just stay like that for as long as I sat there. And, you know, my whole body was basically numb and I just was a ball of energy. And what was strange was like, I had never read like any of the Joe Dispenza stuff, but it turned out that a lot of what he does is get people to a point in their meditation where they're kind of growing their electromagnetic field and they can measure it. I think it's 5 meters around themselves. And I was like, that's crazy because that's exactly what it felt like. And the
Maybe
other
we should go to one of his little retreat things.
Maybe. I guess what bothers me with him, I'm always like hesitant about people that make money off things like this.
Me too, yeah.
But because of the fact that I experienced these things that completely line up with what he was talking about, it makes me feel like, oh, okay.
Maybe he's onto something.
Maybe he's onto something. But the other thing that was strange about it was that what started before all of that was I felt this like energy from my heart. And that's how things were in the beginning of all these changes in the meditation. Like it would start with this like really light feeling, but also like electric kind of that was just emanating from my heart. And it felt really good. Like kind of if you're in love or something, but different because it's just much more light and physical and it's not attached to anything. And then it grew to that. And what he was saying is that the electromagnetic field is kind of emanating from the heart, like from the frequency of the heart. Right. And they have your, like you need to have the heart frequency coherent with the brain frequency in order to like put out that energy. So I was like, weird.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what the animals were feeling.
Your electromagnetic pulse.
And I even had this one thing, I never told anyone this, because I was like, no, I sound just absolutely crazy. I walked to the beach. You know how I used to like...
Run?
Yeah. It was like mostly a walk. It would be like a little run and then walking. But I would go down to the beach. So I walked to the shoreline and this swarm of fish came right up to the shore and started doing like spinning in circles right in front of me and all jumping out of the water. But literally like it was like this swirl that they literally came up to me out of nowhere, came up to where I was standing and just started swirling around. Yes. I was like,
sure you didn't take drugs?
Do you remember how I was with even looking at a sunset?
No. I remember.
I literally was like a pool of like bliss. Like I could barely even think. It was actually a little unmanageable. It was like kind of hard to...
This is what they say happens, you know? Like this is like stories from Eastern mystics.
Yeah, which like I never would have believed, honestly. Yeah. And it really was to the point where the other part about it was that I had to just stop caring about all of it because I was getting a little obsessive.
Obsessive about how you were feeling? Obsessive
about getting to the point that these mystics were talking about. And when you are doing that, that's another desire that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
So you just cannot be fully present when you're thinking about what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even that, I was just like, I have to stop reading books. I've read so much that all the information is just repeating itself at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, there was no more that I can learn. And it just felt like because I was reading, I was trying for something. And that's another thing. If you're trying for something, then
you can't be present.
You can't be present.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be. It's coming from the mind.
You can't not expect.
Right. Yeah. When there's expecting, then it's.
Because you're expecting at the very least to learn something new,
mm-hmm.
or to achieve something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it just had to be this complete let go. And then, so that day that I came in sobbing and you thought maybe my parents died.
Yeah. This is bad.
What happened was like all of that stuff and then more. But basically all of that. And I was sitting in the meditation, and what was going on when I was sleeping, where I felt like I was separating from my body, happened during the meditation. So it was like I was coming out of my body, but then it felt like I was attached only at the point between my eyes. And I felt this like immense pressure, like in, I guess, I don't know, that's just where it was. And it was so much pressure that it was pushing my head back, and I could not even keep my head up. And my body was literally convulsing.
Wow.
Stop laughing at me.
No. It's just, where was this? This is in your mom's?
Yeah, on my mom's porch.
Okay.
And I was just like praying no one was going to open the door, because I'm like, this looks insane.
Yeah.
And then I had to start letting that go, and I had to because then that was a thought. So I had to have like no thoughts,
mm-hmm.
Which is another part of that, the 8 legs of yoga. Like you do all of that background stuff, and then it's the breathing, the posture,
mm-hmm.
not moving, focusing on one thing, having that one thing become the only thing that you can even fathom. Like that is like the only thing in the world. Then you let that go. And if you can like hold on to that, then you get to, I guess, like enlightenment. But it's very easy to fall back to all the other stages.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you're able to not have thought
mm-hmm.
during that, then that's the concept of yoga, of like getting to enlightenment.
Right.
But yeah, so my body was convulsing, like my hands are shaking. I'm literally, oh my God, yeah. And I was hyperventilating, like literally like, and my heart was beating so hard, like literally like pounding my chest so bad that like if I was capable of being afraid in that moment, I would have like been like, I need to go to the hospital. Like, and I had this thought, like, could I be doing this to myself?
Right.
And I was like, no fucking way. Like
as in like,
could I be
triggering yourself?
Yeah, could I be
mentally,
like
mm-hmm.
making myself do this? But it was like I was completely out of control in that moment, or however long it was. It felt like maybe an hour, like I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, and like the whole time this like pressure was building right here, and my head was back, I'm convulsing, my heart is beating out of my chest. And then eventually it just like kind of started to subside, the pressure subsided, but my hands are still shaking like crazy. And I just like opened my eyes and I looked at the sky, and it was just like, I've never felt so much like happiness. And it felt like for the first time this like veil was lifted, of like this like separation that I kind of had from reality. Mm-hmm. And that's always stayed. Like the ability to know where happiness comes from, to get to that point of feeling blissful, to never worry about anything really anymore, because I'm just like, I know what happiness is. I know where it comes from. I know it has nothing to do with anything other than meditation. Like, all of that has remained since then. So I'm not necessarily constantly in that state of like, you know, like almost mind-numbing bliss. When I meditate for an hour a day, like, it's just about there. But if I'm just doing like normal 15-minute meditation, then it's enough to like maintain normal happiness.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't just this realization of something. It was just like months of extreme dedication to being meditative that brought me to that point, and just so many little aspects that I wrote about right away. Like, as soon as that happened, I was like, oh my God, because I used to be such an anxious person, like really like panic attacks, like depression, like everything. And I just felt this like, I don't know, it just like poured out of me. I wrote 99% of that book within a couple months. And then since then it's just been editing, and I'm almost done with that. But it was crazy stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
thanks. But no, I really think that it would be great if AI took over and people didn't have to work and they could just have time to dedicate to this, because it really is like, I understand that, you know, people don't necessarily have time.
An hour a day to, I mean,
and I really think people do.
People do.
But I understand how tempting it is to be caught up in
distracting
life.
Yourself too.
Yeah, and distractions and important issues, because you really have to separate yourself from that. You really have to be like, okay, this is the only thing I care about.
Yeah.
So if there was a lot of people that didn't have to work anymore,
I think it would.
The thing is, like, you would need
shift.
to be really meditative in order to be happy, because you're not going to get a lot of money from the government at that point.
No, you're just going to get enough to get by.
Yeah, which honestly, I promise anyone, if they learn to be truly meditative, none of that shit would matter. You could live in the woods.
And I think that's a large part of, you know, what's about to happen, because none of that is going to matter to a very serious degree, because the idea of being a wealthy person and, you know, having more than the other person isn't going to matter as much. Like, if everyone is on the same playing field, and some people are just like, they're gonna look at you like, why are you doing all that? You know what I mean?
Hopefully. But I think that's
100%.
only going to happen if people become happy.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. More people don't have to do things, because right now, if you really think about it, it's like the type of person that's just like working every day and, you know, wishing he was rich is only wishing he was rich to really just stop working. Right?
But they don't really realize that, I think. I really think they're in competition.
Of course they don't. Yeah, they don't.
But if the
I think
goal
they
was
will.
to... Right.
And I think COVID and the stimulus checks and on those things were like a part of that realization, in a way of like, wait a minute, like I could just exist.
Yeah, for some people.
You know, for some people.
I think there was a lot of like van life type of stuff going on, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, and I think, well, I think there's more than that. I think it's a lot of people that we don't hear about that just decided like, hey, I'm just going to chill out. And I think it's going to be a vast majority of people that decide like, I don't, you know, what do I care what you think of me? You know what I mean? I'm taken care of. My family's taken care of. Like, what more do I need? Do I need a yacht? You know, at this point, it's
but
like,
once again, that needs to be where the culture moves, which is
but what I'm saying about that,
what we're working on.
Yeah. But what I'm saying about that though is like, the person with the yacht, like the people that are going to be rich, the richness is also going to come down. But when people are just like chilling, there's not going to be this looking at the rich, looking at what everyone's doing as this like lofty ideal. You know what I mean? Because everyone's just going to be doing what they're doing. I really think it's going to crash the idea of like that the craziness that we attribute to people that are wealthy, and, you know, all these shows and all these things that are just like all about how much money I have and how much I could do. It's like, I think it might actually be good enough to the point where it goes back to just people being cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where people don't care about those things, because their base needs are taken care of.
But also there are certain things, certain experiences that someone with money can provide that other people can't. Like, for instance, like, you know, us bringing our friends with us
On vacation. Yeah.
You know, if one person is able to afford that, like, it's mutually beneficial because you get to be with your friends. And it's nice when one person in a group of friends is able to provide for the other people. And that can still happen. And I still think that's great. And it could still be the type of thing where people are valued for their value as a person, like, just because they're enjoyable to be around, you know?
Yeah.
Because what good is having money if you can't spend time with people?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to make, again, it's going to be really bad, but then people are going to get happier.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to get happier because they don't have to worry.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a large part of it, right? I mean, like, we're well off now, but there was points where we worried about, you know, where our, like, rent payments and all that stuff. Like, that's a serious thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a serious burden. And once that's lifted, I think, you know, there's an opportunity for a lack of stress. And I think that lack of stress hopefully leads to more introspection and understanding of yourself, you know, like you were saying, and hopefully to more meditation.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting to that level, you know.
The goal.
Crazy. That's the goal. Let's go. I mean, if they keep listening to the New Society podcast,
exactly.
We'll get there before.
This is the training manual for the New Society.
100%.
Huh.
All right.
Well, as you guys know, society is fucked. We are all working on it. And we'll catch you next time.
Yep.